Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Thank you for joining us. Today is May 18th. I can't believe it. It's like traveling super fast. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast. And I want to thank you for joining us and remind you to please follow us on YouTube, on UCY TV. Look for the Age of Fission and like our video. Even if you listen to us live, that'll get our numbers up on YouTube. And thanks for joining us and telling your friends about us. Today we have back with us a friend of the show, Crow, a shamanic practitioner who's been a bit of a traveler around a bit. And I thought I'd ask him to come back and share with his views on helping us cope and manage in this intentionally stressful time. So thanks, Crow, for joining us.
That's nice to be back, Lonnie. Thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate it. So the last time we left, it's funny because the Trump nation is traumatizing America. It's only been a month, and it feels like it's been 3 months since I talked to you last, if we look at world events.
Yeah, every month is 100 days.
Yeah,
a lot has been happening. I can't believe it. I don't know if it was the last time or the time before we spoke. While we were talking, the National Guard was moving in on the Standing Rock encampment, something that I didn't think I was going to see in my lifetime. And since then, things just seem to be getting more and more like a dystopian novel, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even yesterday, a female cop shot an unarmed young black man in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and was acquitted.
Yes.
Because we are training our police that this is the rules. This is how she got out. I read this whole long story about it. If a suspect puts their hands in the car, the police officer is trained to kill the person because they're considered armed. That's ridiculous. Who gives that kind of training?
Well, I have to protest a little bit. I really don't think they're trained to do that. I think it's a lack of training that leads to that.
This is how the lady got off in the courtroom.
Yeah.
That's her excuse, that's what the jury thought.
That most certainly should never have happened. And I blame lack of training for that, because if she had proper training, that situation never would have happened.
Well, to be honest, I blame institutional racism, because if that kid was white, he would not be dead. Let's just be very clear.
And you know what? And the fact that institutional racism exists within the police department and the military and everywhere else is because people are not properly trained. We as a society really have every reason to expect a little higher level of evolution of ourselves than to allow these base and really outdated fears to persist. We had a black president recently. There are ways through this quagmire of old antiquated thinking.
But you know what? That so-called black president, no offense, the so-called black president was half white. We did not have a black president. We had a white president who had black blood in him. He's 50% white. Let's just be really clear. And he behaved exactly like them. He sided with them every time. I mean, he was like Bush on Balco, in my view. He was no hero to us. He gave us carrots in terms of freeing up women a little bit because his wife was so strong. He didn't want his girls to be held back. That's why he did those laws. He did it for his own children. If he had sons, do you think for a heartbeat he would have been doing that? No. No.
Well, as a society, though, a foot is in the door. I have not, in my lifetime, experienced the president that I could fully support, but there are some that are far better than others, or far worse than others, if you'd rather look at it that way. And right now, I think that we're, living with one that is the absolute worst this country's ever seen. At first, I used to try to think about that because I do have a background in history, and there were some bad guys. But this guy is the absolute worst, and I absolutely cringe when he says anything about history, because obviously he is functionally illiterate when it comes to history.
Okay, let's talk about history. To me, and I have said this many times on this radio show, Trump is Pinochet 2.0. He is the CIA Nixon Pinochet scandal 2.0. They did it better. They did it smarter. And with Pinochet and their agenda is the same. It's forcing Alan Greenspan's neoliberal Chicago Boys style economic policy on them so that the rich people get very rich very quickly. They gut everything. And then when the people inevitably take it back, as Greenspan noted, they're going to be so debilitated they can't take it back very quickly.
There is one notable difference, though. Is Pinochet was much better at working with U.S. intelligence.
That's because Trump doesn't know that he's a CIA asset. He thinks he's one of them.
Yeah.
That's why he's being set up, frankly. I feel he is a misogynistic pig who needs therapy. I mean, he needs help. Seriously, the guy is mentally, I think, and I have said this from the beginning. I mean, but the whole thing, the reason that he got elected, the reason that everybody just acquiesced and said so is there's a lot of people that looked at Hillary Clinton with just the same scowl and disgust like me. I personally 100%, and I'm going to tell you what, 100% believe that Hillary Clinton and the DNC, I think actually what happened was Seth Rich got murdered by a Russian spy. I mean, it was a Russian hit job. They came in and murdered him. Boom, he was dead. I personally think the reason that this has taken all this long time is because it was the Democrats who hired the Russians to hack into the system because they knew they couldn't stop the Bernie wave. They knew that Bernie Sanders was going to be the candidate unless they messed with the machine, and they didn't know how. So who'd they call? The Russians. Because that's really easy. They've known that the Russians have been trying to spy on us, and they thought they could trust them, and they did trust them. And they didn't, and they even killed Seth Rich for them. Boom, clean, and nobody is allowed to talk about it. This is how I really feel about Hillary Clinton and the DNC. Those people are evil. Somebody there needs to get arrested. Seriously, they're just as bad as Trump. I mean, at this point, I don't know Trump's dirty hands, but Hillary Clinton's are in public.
Well, the nature of conspiracy is that people don't want you to know. You don't want people to know what you're up to. But you know what? I don't know that if having an occasional fall person, as sweet as that might taste, is really going to change a deeply flawed system. And fighting within. Yeah, fighting within or trying to change a system from within sounds like a noble cause, but I've been hearing that my whole life, and I have not seen anyone succeed at it. who is responsible for the changes? It really is the outsiders. Bernie isn't a complete outsider, but he's outsider enough that he rocked this system that is clearly flawed. I will not ever register for a party because I just think that the whole system of party politics is dysfunctional.
Do you vote? Do you vote, John?
I do vote. I vote in every election that I can.
Yeah.
I'm unaffiliated, and I occasionally vote for a Republican. We have a Republican governor in Massachusetts who I think is one of the most effective and honorable people serving that office for a long time. Oftentimes I'll vote for a Democrat, but I do always look for the alternative parties, and if I can find information on them, I try to learn about them. And if I feel that they have something worth supporting and they're a better choice, I'll vote for them, even though I know that vote is never going to get them into office, because it's my sacred right as a United States citizen to be able to take part in the system. And I'm a minority, but you know what? I'm a minority in a lot of other ways as well. Doing shamanic work, talk about fringe, but I'm dedicated to it because I believe that what I do does make a difference, maybe a small difference, but as the Chinese say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You have to have, people willing to begin positive pressure, gentle positive pressure, in order to start something moving.
I feel exactly the same way. And you know what? That's why I'm on this radio show 5 days a week, because we have a big mess. And the way they've been handling it for the last 80 years, 100 years is incorrect, 100% incorrect, besides being inhumane and atrocious. I mean, it has been grotesque. So it's time to stop. But the only reason it's not working is less than 18% of the people actually engage. Maybe 25, that's nothing. We need, if we just got like 50, another 25%, these people, how little it takes for them to change a law. This is what the purpose of the shamanic walk is about, right? It doesn't matter. You don't have to go out with brute force. You just do it with your mind, your thought, your actions.
Right. And also working with spirit, people, it's oftentimes people's spirit that motivates them to do something positive.
So, Crow, would you mind if I
interrupt
interrupt you? Because I'd like you to explain this before we go off on this, because this is a fine line that I think people, when they hear the word shamanic, they think you're talking about the devil. It's not, because it's really, it's not a religion thing. Like, you can be a Christian, you can be a Hindu and still practice, because you're still walking in faith. It's just a different language on how you're relating to God, I think. And it helps you manifest in your life. I mean, it's more like a deeper priesthood in a way, but not really. I mean, it's...
Well, unless your religion specifically prohibits you from shamanic practice, you certainly can practice it. And, even then you can. As far as I'm concerned, you have my permission. There is no central authority, and there's no book of dogma that we must adhere to or whatever. So, in that sense, it couldn't be classified as a religion per se. Although anthropologists would say that, yes, it's the oldest religion. There's evidence that shamanism has been practiced for over 40,000 years. So it is a spiritual, it's a spiritual path. It's generally described as being animist, and that does not refer to animals. It refers to animation. And the words I choose to describe that is that we believe that all things are imbued with spirit, and all spirit is of equal value. So, I do not believe in an anthropomorphic worldview that humans are at the top of everything and animals are here for our service or whatever. I respect the spirit in all things, including what a lot of people consider to be inanimate. It's very common in shamanic cultures to recognize that there's a spirit in animals, there's a spirit in mountains, there's a spirit in even stones, and that reaching or developing a worldview and a sensitivity to the fact that there's a sacred force in all things immediately improves your life and your outlook and your spiritual comfort. And most people who begin to live this way are recognized as being able to assist in healing. And that's what draws a lot of people as healers. That's a big thing in our culture nowadays. A lot of people like to follow quote unquote healing paths. Shamanism is intimately associated with healing, but that's not what it is. It's a spiritual awareness and a spiritual recognition of the sacredness of all things. That has given rise to perhaps a lot of other religious philosophies, and we have no argument with other religious philosophies, although shamans worldwide have been periodically persecuted and burned as witches. You mentioned the devil.
Because that's how people
way.
Well, that's how they perceive the word shaman. I know that immediately. Any Christian you talk to will like, oh my God, they're a shaman or they're a witch, and they're really afraid of it. But it's not. I don't actually perceive the shamanic practices as really. And this is why I understood when you asked me in the very beginning of our interviews to refer to it as shamanic practices. Because of that connotation, because it gets all twisted. There's different ways of people communicate, but it gets twisted into something that's not what it is, because it's deeper than just voodoo or you know what I mean? Or the idea that you can change events. That has nothing to do with it.
Well, actually it does, though, because we can change events. Everyone can change events.
Exactly. Everyone can change events. So that's not like that.
Exactly.
But is that a shamanic practice? Would that be, remember a long time ago, Crow, when there was some event I participated. I don't remember what year, but I think it was 11 or noon. Wherever you were, everybody just sat and prayed and prayed that they would change their mind about something. And there was over several million people did it. Do you remember that? And they actually did change their minds. And I honestly believe there was a big thing on the news about it, even because it was like 86 or 87.
Yeah, and whenever people assemble for a good cause, it does affect change, at least for those who partake, and probably for many more as well. An exact example from my life since yesterday. Someone contacted me and many other people because an individual, a friend of theirs, had just had a difficult childbirth. Or the childbirth went fine, but the woman began unexplainably to start to bleed, and it looked like the old days where she might not survive. So the word went out, and people all around this country, at least, and probably in Canada as well, from the names I saw, dropped what they were doing and turned mindfully to pray or hold ceremony or in some way spiritually support this woman in her difficulty. And, some people might have said, well, she would have recovered anyway, medicine is good and so forth. But the improvement was immediate. You can't tell me that we wasted our time. You can't tell me that it didn't improve the whole to some small degree, that people came together to support an individual in need. That is shamanism. That is a shamanic community in action.
So, like a prayer group. This is what a prayer group does. When a person who's
very much, it's
church,
very similar. It's the same. It's the same intent. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the pastor goes there, the church members go there, they pray over the person, they believe in their well-being, they put their intent and their energy in them, and you know what? It works a lot.
It does, and I encourage everyone to nurture that part of our humanity that does that, no matter what your religion or outlook is. With shamanism, there's also when you're a trained shamanic practitioner, you are taught specific ceremonies, specific techniques that are shown in practice with a long track record to be more intensive and directed to an individual. And that's the thing that kind of distinguishes shamanism from just the prayer group. I don't like to say just, because a prayer group is a fine thing.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. These are specific practices that have gone. I almost laughed when you said have a long track record, like a few thousand years, like 10,000.
Yeah, several thousand years.
Probably longer than we could count,
Yeah. And, it's interesting because when I was, a teenager, maybe. Yeah, I was a teenager. It was before I was involved in shamanism, actually shortly before I first became involved in it. My grandmother, who came to this country in 1901 or something, during the influenza epidemic, she came from an abusive environment up in Quebec. She had been farmed off when her mother died. She, out of the blue, told me about this experience where she fell out of the barn. She was up in the hayloft and fell. She was tossing stuff out, and I guess something got caught, and she went out with the bale. You hit the ground, you get a nosebleed that wouldn't stop. And where they lived, this is in the late 1800s, where they lived, there were no medical people nearby. So someone went to the local natives, the nearest ones, to send a healer over. And what she described that happened to her was a classical extraction technique that I've learned about since. And she expressed that she never knew if the magic worked, or if she was just so scared that her blood stopped, but her nose stopped bleeding, and she recovered. And I take this as a testimony from someone that I knew who was a devout Catholic. There is something going on here that is healing, and she always had respect for these so-called savages. That's what they were referred to. There's a French pronunciation for it, but that's what they called them where they lived. But she always remembered that, and I have to admit that story has come to my mind many times in the years since, where I've been learning about these things, and I try to approach everything. I don't try. I have a skeptical side. And it has made my progress intermittent, really slow at times. But when I believe something, when I've had it demonstrated to me and I accept it fully. And I can tell you that, one, there are spirits everywhere. They can be entered into relationship with. You can experience personal power by that close relationship, and they do many times genuinely want to help relieve suffering, and it requires a relationship between a person who lives in this middle world reality that we live in, and them together in order to affect some of these changes. And that's where shamanism starts to distinguish itself from other religious outlooks or other spiritual outlooks. But in no way does it go fly in the face of anything that I can tell. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let me ask you this. Are there, around the world, common shamanic practices that sprang up independent of each other?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to Mongolia in just about a month, a group of us. It's a mixture of Americans, Canadians, and French citizens. We're going to Mongolia representing Western shamanism as individuals, not any particular group. And in Mongolia, shamanism has been practiced.
You mean like colonial, not Western, colonial shamanic practitioners?
By Western, I mean, European, North South America, rather than Asian. Because there is a different line. There's a lot of cultural specificity that kind of rose over the millennia. And in Asia, oftentimes the shamanism they practice is very ethnocentric ancestor worship. You see that in Chinese religion and Japanese religion and also Southeast Asia. There's a lot of influence of the spirits of ancestors, more so perhaps than the spirits of nature, although they do recognize them as well. So clearly, when cultures are different, certain practices get passed down and observed and imitated and so on. So there are differences. We're going there because part of our mission is to share our shamanic experiences and try to kind of have a little bit more global recognition of the importance of shamanism and it's different idiosyncrasies kind of informing each other and enriching both. And so that's why we're going there. And I think I might have drifted from your question. Can you restate the question again so I can get back to the point?
I was asking about, I was engrossed in what you were saying. So I was thinking about these shamanic practices because, that's kind of like one of the scientific methods is you see if these same practices pop up. That's how you can have a true line of being, right? Like if the same practices have popped up, it's kind of like my point that nobody is an atheist because the second you die, I mean, honestly, I think that everybody that I just can't, to me, that's how deep my belief in I don't know what the higher being, but I think it's kind of like a unity. I don't think of myself as separate from God. So I don't know. I think that we're all part of this thing that's called life. This is why every life matters. Every voice matters. Everything matters. We're an intrinsic part of it because we give it value. It's our illusion. It's our dream world. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we anybody who claims to be absolutely certain what's going to happen when they die, I think is probably either a wishful thinker or self-deluded. Nobody really knows. We can only be informed by our experience and what we believe. And most everybody that I know, even self-proclaimed quote-unquote atheists, believe in some persistence of their spirit, at least for some time. And where do we get that belief? It seems to me that it's innate. It's part of us, just like the ability to
yeah, that's why I was
experience.
asking about the shamanic practices. Like, are they innate? Have they popped up in, are there the same kinds of practices that are practiced by the indigenous people, the First Nations who lived here in North America, their shamanic practices, and the ones that are on Europe and the ones that are in Australia and in Asia? You know what I mean? Like, have these things popped up? Are they similar?
Yes. There are two terms that we bandy about here in the West that have very similar corollaries everywhere, and those would be extraction, to remove something that doesn't belong and is causing harm, and retrieval, where part of your essence has been lost, stolen, or sometimes just struck away from you in a trauma that a shaman will help you reintegrate. In the U.S., Sandra Ingerman has done a lot of pioneering work, and she calls it soul retrieval, and a lot of people who practice these techniques also refer to them as soul retrieval. She is an absolute, I can't think of a word that honors her enough as far as the level of her dedication and work in that area. And other communities, from New Guinea, where they do not have a long history of interacting with other people, but the shamans there do very, very similar work. And where else? Just about everywhere. It's almost universal, just like the sonic driving, whether
and
by
the things
drum
that
or
they
rattles.
do are similar, like the extracting and pulling things out.
Yes, Yeah,
That's
that's
odd that
very,
you
very
say that,
common.
John, because when my kids were little, this is what I would do is I would put my hands, when my kids got sick, I would just look at them and put my hand about 6 inches over their head. Like I could just tell I could feel the heat of their head with my hand. And I just tell them
Sure.
to
Yeah.
give me all their pain, all their sickness, to give mommy their cold because I could take it. And I swear to God, they'd go to sleep and they'd wake up well in the morning.
You have to be really careful doing that because although those skills may be innate and you may be very good at it from the beginning, I personally got very sick doing that one time. The person I was working on immediately recovered from being really sick,
Oh,
and
so you
within
took on
hours,
too
I
much.
had all the symptoms. What I didn't do is I
Yeah.
didn't properly verse myself in the techniques of discarding this negative energy or whatever it is, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
And I
release.
ended up holding it, and it got me sick. And then, well, that it's
That's
all
the
well and good from
process.
a long-suffering martyr Catholic,
So
outlook
these
that
are
I
just
once
kind
had.
of natural. See, for me, that was kind of natural. Now, if they got sick, I'd really take them to the doctor. It wasn't like I'd put my hand, but if they were like mildly ill, they could easily.
Hmm.
I mean, maybe that's why maybe you took something out of somebody that was a lot heavier than what I would do, you know. So I felt like that was natural. I mean, I felt like a lot
Hmm.
of people probably do that with their kids just naturally because when you have a little baby, you're holding your baby and you're cuddling it and trying to, you're taking that on from your child. I think there's a huge value in our intentions. This is why in my introduction, our thoughts matter. Like people matter, our thoughts matter, and
And like you,
happiness is resistance, folks. I mean, really, whatever it is. I mean, if you want to resist whatever it is that's annoying you, get happy, because
mhm.
really, ooh, I think the overlords want us miserable, John. That's what I think part of their plan is, because we're easy to control when we're miserable.
Yeah, but you have to be careful when you hold things back. It can be like a dam. It holds back a lot of water, but the water doesn't go away, and that potential, that energy that the water has, can be very destructive once the dam fails. So, yeah. In your introduction, you also say every action matters, and that's something that I like to talk about too, is because,
I think I say every life matters or every voice matters, but I am going to change it to say every action matters. I'm going to be doing a new intro.
the sound quality could be better. I think that tape is a little worn.
Well, I intentionally
But
picked that super worn tape because it
mhm.
reminds me of the nuclear industry. Okay, same old thing, same old murder. It's like by the end of it, you're like, shut up.
Well,
I mean, it was
there's
a
some
little bit
important
of
stuff
a
in there. You don't
rebel.
want to get lost.
Okay. So that's the first time I've explained why I picked that stuff, I think, in a long time. But I am going to redo it because it says Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm now on Monday through Friday. You know what I mean?
I've been meaning to mention that to you for months, and I keep forgetting. So,
Yes, I know. I have not forgotten. It's just I don't have the time. I mean, I want good grades at school, so I study.
yeah.
But it's interesting. I'm learning a lot. This is the thing, Crow. Like this whole thing, we're talking about the politics, framing politics, like this idea with Tibet. I mean, you guys
Hmm.
need to become policy entrepreneurs. I mean, these whole social scientists, I emailed my teacher after one class and I'm like, I can't believe what I'm learning. Like, I feel like they have actually studied this and labeled it. They're like, oh, well, we're like a little dissected under the microscope, but they're doing that. It reminds me of social services, to be honest. Like when social services comes in and sees a kid who's like scared of his parents and the house looks clean, but there's something going on. They're like, oh yeah, this looks very interesting here. And then they walk away.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. We are in a time of criticality now where every voice does matter. Whatever you think you can do, go do it. Like
Yeah. It
I
does.
am a nonviolent protester. I do not believe in creating violence or hostility. Like do like the water protectors do. Stand up to your aggressors and say, you know what, I forgive you. I
Yeah.
forgive you. I
Can,
forgive you. Because you know what, that
can I
drives a
interrupt you
narcissist.
for? Can I interrupt you for just a second while you're on that
Please
thought?
do.
I,
Please do.
I mentioned the name to you, maybe a month or so back, Lila June Johnston.
Yes.
She's a spoken word artist. She does some hip hop, but most importantly, she is a spokesperson for indigenous sanity. I admire her like I admire a few people. And she has a YouTube video, Lila June, on the topic of nonviolence. I recommend everybody to stop and take a few minutes. I think it's 15 minutes, maybe, something around that, to listen to this. It's a deeply personal story and an extremely powerful message.
Okay.
She stands with many of the issues like the Standing Rock and many others, and she's just a real a great role model, particularly for young women, but I think for everybody. So anyway, that's
awesome.
My commercial for her. I feel passionate about
and
her
so
work.
She actually participated in that I Forgive You campaign.
She did indeed. As a matter of fact, she has another YouTube video. Was it Franklin County? No, I live near Franklin County. Anyway, where some of the law enforcement was coming from, she made a march, a forgiveness march, and spoke at that to the enemy, if you will. She doesn't use words like enemy and war lightly, but she always defines them as being the positive aspect of those relationships. Anyway, not to go on and on, but I did want to mention that because she is so relevant to what you were talking about in nonviolence.
I'm going to add this link to our the notes of this podcast so people can see it.
That would be great. Yeah.
And if they want to see it before then, if they want to just remember and go look after the show at who she is, it's Lyla June,
yes.
Speaks on the topic of nonviolence. It's actually 39 minutes and 44 seconds, but it's probably worth listening to.
It'll seem like 15 minutes.
Great. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah. Her last name is Johnston, but her public name is Lila June, so I think that's enough to find her.
Okay, yeah. Great. Well, I think that's really important for us to listen and to enact these things of nonviolence.
And there's the other word, act. If I can talk about that for just a minute.
Please do.
As I mentioned to you earlier, I get a new word every day from dictionary.com. It's to try to keep my vocabulary from disappearing. And today's word made me chuckle when I saw it. It was called slacktivist. And at first I thought it was just one of those clever, modern slang joinings of words. But it made me think because it had two definitions that were opposite, one positive and one negative. The negative one is pretty easy. Activists will kind of deride people who just sign petitions and never do anything else. But in defense of slacktivism, it's doing something. And I've been really thinking a lot about that lately. I'm not I am angry with the Trump voters, but I'm not as angry with the Trump voters as I am with the people who did not vote, because they're the reason that Trump got in. Every time a huge political event is based upon the will of the people, it always reflects the will of a minority of people, because people aren't doing anything; they're not voting. And when it comes to when it comes to ecology, when it comes to social justice, when it comes to even just stating our outrage about an injustice that's been, hasn't been addressed properly, like the shooting that you talked about and so many more, the people who don't do anything are, part of the problem of these things perpetuating. Everyone needs to do something. Even if it is only sign a petition, if the alternative is to do nothing at all, to like something or pass it on, because who knows, the slacktivist might just hit a nerve with someone who's a potential activist and motivate them. That's happened to me. I've been sleepy parts of my life, and it's been events or other people saying or doing something that has inspired me to actually not just do something, but then do something more. And what I'm doing in Mongolia, we're taking water from the Rapidan River in Virginia. We're taking water from the Connecticut River in Massachusetts. We're taking water from the Seine in France. We're taking water from somewhere in Ottawa. I don't know the river, but we're taking water from all over the West, and we're bringing it as an offering to them in a kind of as a symbolic gesture of our support in recognition of the sacredness of water, because it's a global thing. It isn't just the DAPL. It isn't just when the Mississippi was burning. There are problem spots all over the place, but globally, you can't get much more basic
it's called
than
nuclear
protecting
pollution.
water.
It's nuclear pollution. Do you know what Fukushima is planning on doing? I just read a story yesterday that said they have a plan. Their plan is they're going to dump all those tanks in the ocean. They can't keep doing them. They're falling apart. So instead of letting them fall apart on Japan, they're going to pour them into the ocean.
Yeah, that's like, saying we have too many poisons under the sink. Let's give them to mom. Let's put them in our mother. That the insanity this escapes me. How can people think that's a solution? Committing violence against what supports you. Committing violence against what we're part of. That insanity needs to be pointed out to people, not just people who are doing it, although shining light on it is really important, but also to everyone else to get them to ask the question, to get them to show that we are the larger group. We want to know what is wrong with you. We want better solutions. And, and of course, in the case of, the nuclear industry, it should be shut down. It should be stopped entirely.
Immediately.
It is not immediately. It is not a clean fuel. Whoever says that is either deluded or deceitful. We have the technology, and it's developing, and it's improving, fast enough to provide our needs, and especially if we stop wasting like we do. With some conservation and with truly clean technologies, we don't need the oil, we don't need the nuclear, we don't need the coal. We do not need to be a parasite on our mother. This is it's insane, and it requires people to do something and then do more, and then more if they can. And again, I really admire a voice like yours that is relentless and very strong, and you're out there being an activist, and I wish there were people being activists. It's not my nature to broadcast what I feel as much, but I still want to do what I feel is right in the way that's right for me to do it, and to do it as well as I can. And I feel there are a lot of people out there that fit a lot of different categories, and we need them all. But what we don't need are what we don't need are people who say that's nice and go back to the television.
Well, the thing is, we don't need people who don't believe in themselves and don't want to believe in our future, because it really is critical. It does matter. And yes, we're sorry that you're hurt, and we're sorry that it's this way. It's really sad. I mean, I feel like we've all been snookered. For the last 50, 60 years, we really did believe that these guys were, and now it's like the Wizard of Oz. That was such an odd analogy. But in a way, the perpetrators, they always like to tease you, and they've been making movies telling us how it's been for a long time. They're not hiding anything, but you know why they get away with it? It's because everybody backs down, and because they don't love themselves. They have to understand that every voice matters. However insignificant it is, it does matter. Even if every drop in the bucket fills the cup. That's the reality.
It absolutely does, and that's one of the beauties of you're familiar with the use of a talking stick?
No.
In ceremony, particularly in Native American ceremony, a lot of cultures have this tradition where, when you're at council and discussion is warranted, a stick or some item, sometimes it's a stone, is passed all around. Everyone has an opportunity to hold it, and when they hold it, they can speak, and no one can interrupt them. So even those who never have their voices heard in the outside society has an opportunity to speak their mind, and everyone else is honor bound to listen to what they have to say. And they can't respond until it's their turn to speak. We used to practice this as part of the sweat lodge that I used to run. And I have to admit, a lot of times people shuddered when certain individuals were about to get the stick, because they knew it was going to be a long time. And they didn't always like what the person had to say. But it is so essentially important to give everyone voice. and for them to know that they're being heard. I still have my talking stick. It's older than it's not older than both my children, but it's definitely older than my daughter. And although I don't use it in ceremony as much as I used to, it has so much power because people have gone through catharsis holding that stick. People have, I don't have to go
if you
on
have
and on about it.
And you don't want to talk, can you not talk, or do you have to talk when you have it?
No, if you get the stick and you have nothing to say, you just address. In our tradition was to say, "Aho," I'm finished, and pass it to the next person. So you are given the opportunity. No one's forced, and oftentimes it'll go around more than once because everyone should also have an opportunity to respond as well as express. So it's something that the concept of allowing everyone to be heard is essential. And anyway, that's why I went on my tirade. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. I mean, that is exactly, this is why I like you to share this idea about the shamanic practices with our listeners, because we are overwhelmed right now. On Monday, I attempted to have Jose Gonzalez, who's a counselor, I guess he called himself, talking about anxiety, because right now they're like pumping up anxiety. It's like, this is the thing with the Trump, this whole thing about the Trump, the Comey, this whole indictment, all this thing that they want to do. I think that's like a shiny ball. Like that, I knew Comey was going to get fired the day I watched him on the hearing. He basically lied to the Senate. So there was a whole scramble with the FBI. This was all intentional. None of this is like... They need better writers. That's what I think. Like these overlords, they need better writers, because you can see right through their scripts, man.
They do, yeah. And sometimes I wonder why they're even trying to make it like it's basically just regressing back to feudalism and the control of society and its resources by very few. You can
need
call
to
it what you like.
Dickens. They need to reread Dickens to understand why the French Revolution happened. You know what I mean? Like, this is really the deal. Like, people will take it for only so long, but it's not just taking it. We have to take it for a long time, because our atmosphere, our air, our water, we really must. This is why it's important for us to come up with solutions and figure out how to reverse the situation with all ideas. Like with microbes, with positive thinking, with positive self-talk. I mean, it sounds Pollyanna to just say it's that simple, but...
Well, essentially it is. That's how it begins, simply. The deeper we get into the solution, the complicated it's going to get, but the beginning of the solution is always simple. First you stop taking it.
Right. Right. You just say no.
Yeah. Yeah. And you start working against it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Crow, why don't you tell people about your trip to Tibet a little bit more? Like, what part of Tibet? Like, where do you guys go exactly? The Moyen?
Tibet's a little ways off. That could be a tough one. I don't think the Chinese would welcome us. But no, the first one is Mongolia, which is south of. No, wait a minute. It's north of Tibet. South of Tuva, which is, I guess, still in Russian Federation. It's on the steppes. It's basically what in the United States we would call the plains. South America they call the Altiplano. It's high, grassy, mountainous. Not a lot of agricultural promise from a plant perspective. They breed horses. The Mongolian horses have forever been the best breeding stock. But anyway, they have had a long shamanic tradition that was only interrupted briefly during communist rule, where they were persecuted. And before that, when the Buddhists came in, they also persecuted the shamans, but later kind of incorporated them into the local brand of Buddhism. So it kind of assimilated it somewhat and influenced it. But it is going through a tremendous resurgence now. In fact, I think it's kind of an irony that they actually have a union of shamans in Mongolia now because of the social influences of socialism. But we are looking very much forward to meeting with them, sharing their practices, and then taking back some of what we learned from them and seeing, if we can, help to educate other people about shamanism. My professed method of shamanism is core shamanism, which is, really pared down, as taught by Michael Harner and the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. It leaves open, the door for cultural influence and so forth, but what they instruct is just the core basics that are kind of universally recognized as shamanic practice. And we don't throw in any specific ethnic practices, because it really isn't the purpose of the foundation to do that. That's something you can learn on your own once you've got the basics down. After that, we're going to be going to Peru. We're getting the details of that trip planned, and that trip is open. We haven't put it out for people to join it yet. That will take 15 people to the Sacred Valley and Titicaca, Puno, and the mountainous regions of Peru. And then a future trip will go to the Amazon jungle, and where I've had more experience working with shamans there. And this talk of Nepal, the conversation is just beginning to start there. So we're hoping to turn this into a very active educational vehicle for people who are engaged in shamanic practice. We only accept people who have demonstrated some experience with shamanism, either by attending one of the recognized schools or by conversation. You can get an idea. We just don't want people who are idly curious that might end up with more than they could handle. The reason that's important to me is because one of my experiences in the Amazon happened to be with someone who had no idea what they were in for, and there was no leaving. You were there for you were there deep in the jungle for about 10 days, and there was some heavy stuff going on. So I don't want to subject anyone to an experience like that, if they don't expect it. So so my partner lives in France and is handling a lot of things from there that are more easily done from there, and we are both involved in some advanced training with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, so we have that connection as well. And we have recently gotten nonprofit status as a educational nonprofit, and it is my hope.
What's the formal name of the nonprofit? What is the formal name of the nonprofit?
Shamanic Voyages Incorporated.
Okay.
And it's my hope that at some point in time there will be a board of directors made up of people I don't even know yet, and that it will outlast me. I really have a vision for this being something really good for the higher learning of people who are dedicated to a shamanic path. And for anyone who's interested in learning more about shamanism and doesn't really know much, the Foundation for Shamanic Studies at shamanism.org is a great place to start. Many people who have kind of an Eastern bent in their philosophies may feel more closely attuned to Alberto Villoldo's Four Winds Society. Sandra Ingerman teaches a whole package of instruction, and I can't say enough nice things about Sandra. She's wonderful. There are some people who don't have as large a reach. For instance, Jerry Starnes is down in Austin, Texas. I really admire him. It goes on and on. There are a lot of people out there as well who, if you keep a healthy level of skepticism, you can spot pretty quick as self-promoters that might not be worth wasting your time with. But there are a lot of really genuine people out there. Your heart will guide you. if you're looking for someone to help you learn more. But those are great places to start. And of course, the shamanicvoyages.com. We have links occasionally. We're growing and want to put as much, educational stuff and leads up there as we can. But
we'll put your link into this podcast. People can find it through our podcast. So the podcast is either on the website at ucy.tv. Under my show, you can go to shows and then look for my podcast. It'll be right there. Or you can go to YouTube. It'll post up today on YouTube in about, half an hour, 45 minutes after the show. So.
Well, thank you, or at least I might, for the opportunity to talk with you about this again, and thank you for what you do. It means a lot to a lot of people.
Really? It's very difficult to get a measure to see if people even hear it, because I interview so many different kinds of people. But I think it's important. I honestly, in my view, I have come to understand it's all mixed up. It's all together. It's all mezclado. We cannot separate it. You know what I mean? Like the pollution in the ocean is going to, if we don't change our methods of managing this, we will have lost a beautiful gift. And so.
That's right. And I just also want to say that, it's not whether people know that you are doing it, it's what you're doing. That's what's important. That's what not to lose sight of, because our recognition really isn't, that only strokes our ego. It doesn't really matter.
Well, it's not really
if we're doing this stuff, it's going to get out there. It's going to change things.
That's really what I want more than anything, is for us to really get active and change things and make a difference. And everyone to get involved. I want everyone to understand that their voice does matter. It does really, really, really matter what we do. And every little bit drops. Yeah, I love the idea of Slacktivism, because it gives people like, okay, I can be a slacker and still do something.
Yeah, do something and then do more.
Do something and then do more. Yeah, there you go. I like that. Wow. Well, Crow, thanks for being with us. It's been really great. I imagine that the next time you're on in 6 weeks or so, or 8 weeks, we'll be talking about this is the weird thing. I've never lived through a time like this where we're looking forward to the future and wondering what kind of catastrophic events this presidency is going to throw us into. I mean, this is just like the guy is, but we've never had like an open batterer in the White House either. Like he's literally like, seriously.
Well, I don't know. We had Jackson. That came close.
That's true. And we did have the Bush crime family in there. I mean, he did, there were rumors about him and Laura. So.
Shame on you. I had put that out of my mind. Now I get back to the
I don't know how you can. I mean, honestly, George Bush Jr. must be. I saw a meme of him laughing, and it said, "The face you get when you realize you're not the worst president anymore."
I almost sent that email myself.
Yeah, so I was like, okay. But, there's people who really like them. I was on the radio. I think I shocked my guest yesterday talking about Trump, because I think he likes him. There are people who believe in that these guys are decent people. Like, they think that Trump is being set up by the deep state.
Well,
Whatever. And he's part of the deep state.
I don't want these people making decisions for me, that's for sure.
Exactly. Their paradigm is not our paradigm. So as long as we lean into it, exercise our democracy, and just lean into it, exercise how we want our government to work, we can get this going. So
that's right. And voter registration, important. Getting out and voting, really important. And joining the march, really important.
6 seconds. Thanks, Crow, for being with us. Put your courage feet on, you guys. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, Lonnie. Bye-bye.